To my complete surprise, I was not ushered into the arena area to wait on standby for my turn to go out and face whatever horror show they had planned for us this time. Instead, I was brought over to a very, very large medical facility where I saw about a dozen other humans along with a whole bunch of different type of doctors getting ready to accept those who had been, well, pretty much tore up by whatever in the hell was going to happen to them out there. We discussed what was going to happen. I was given my set of tools and told that I had to be over in a certain area and to treat whoever came through. Didn't matter who, and to not ask any questions. Whatever. I didn't care at this point. I really didn't care. I was so used to dealing with drunk idiots and people doing stupid shit. Who knows? Who cares? It didn't matter to me. We could hear the roar of the crowd going up and down from where we were as they could release different creatures to go at each other and all that other fun stuff that people tend to enjoy. And we just waited for the first few to roll in. As the first few rolled in, the other doctors, not human, would simply look at them and do their version of triage. They either said yes or no and pointed in a different direction. All four of the ones that came in first were a complete no, as in, nope, they didn't survive the trip, they didn't make it to us. I was like, okay, whatever. I saw different ones. I saw reptilians, I saw insectoids, I saw aliens, I saw all sorts of stuff. I even saw a couple of those little scrawny little guys. I'm just like, oh, son of a bitch. But what can you do? They were already tore apart by the time they got to us. And it's not tore apart something we can fix. The medical tech that's here is absolutely astounding, but there's only so much we can do. And it wasn't for about an hour, and then we finally could hear, way off in the corner, the announcer go, "Humans! Come on, we got humans for you." And I'm, what? Did they just say humans? And as the rest of us humans actually were like, yeah, I think that's what he said, everyone else was looking at us with almost a fear. And that's when I noticed something. I was one of the few that weren't wearing that control collar. I guess they figured that I was a non-threat, even though I was one of the ones who actually fought off those big beasts before. However, I had been trained for the most part to be more of a healer than a fighter, even though I was one of those place the bets on type folks. All things considered, I had it a whole lot easier than a few others. It wasn't long before the first humans came in. One poor guy was missing his left arm, tore off just over the elbow, but he was still alive. He had put a tourniquet on his arm to stop the bleeding, but immediately we grabbed him, ushered him over, and got into the tissue reconstruction area so we could rebuild his arm. It didn't take long for the machine to do what it had to do, but the problem is we had to hold him down to get him locked into the machine. Once you're in the machine, you can't move. The hard part is once it's going down and putting pressure on the different areas, most people flinch. Most everything flinches, as it hurts like hell. I can attest to this one. This foot is not exactly mine. That being said, we didn't think too much of it, being that this was looked like a 26-year-old dude who was in really good shape. I was simply surprised to see all the different scars on him that were still there. And we were simply rebuilding his arms as he screamed in absolute pain. As I stated before, you can't use this device with anesthetic. It just gets in the way. Plus, the device itself is going to purge it anyway. Later on, maybe about a half an hour later, we saw another group of humans come in. These were mostly just beat up. They weren't exactly bleeding too much, but it was bad enough that we had to patch them up. And we went and asked them, because these could actually carry on a sentence, what was going on. They told us that oh my God, they're putting us against everything, man. It's horrible out there. Just, oh God, we faced one of those cow caterpillar things, but they had like 3 of them this time, and they charged us. Oh man, I took a horn right here. He stretched up, and I could visibly see that one of his ribs was broken. I had to get him set up so we could fix him, and I had to warn him that this was not going to feel good. You actually had to set on a type of suction cup, which would pull his rib back into place, and with an odd crunch, you could actually hear the bone going back in. Oh, the curses that came out of that man's mouth. However, it didn't occur to me too much that there was only one female that actually had shown up so far. And then We saw something just as we were finishing up with those four that I was not ready for. In was rolled in on a cart, no cushioning, just a regular cart, and just dropped onto the floor was a 10-year-old kid. We ran over and I just started screaming, "What the fuck, dude? What the fuck?" And the team actually looked at me and, "Yeah, I thought I saw kids. Where's the rest of them?" Without hesitation, the aliens simply stated, "They didn't make it. Why would I bring them here? They dead." As I grabbed the kid along with another and put him on the table to try and save his life, I could feel the tension in the room as we all suddenly just started freaking out internally. Nobody was saying anything except those of us trying to keep this kid alive. Those over in the fire team that had just come back were ushered out, and I could see the hate in their eyes. The whole day began to be like this. More humans, more other aliens would come in, many of them missing limbs, and we patched them up as best we can. I turned into Hawkeye Pierce as we began to patch everybody up, just meatball surgery, get them stable enough to survive and get them out, because we had so many coming in, it was getting ridiculous. We had a few of these mammoths come in, and I don't mean mammoth like the actual elephant looking thing. I mean mammoth as in that's what they call themselves. They were huge avian creatures with these massive wings that could barely fit through the damn door, yet we still had to manage to get them healed. They flew very, very fast with those strange, almost dragonflyish wings, 2 different sets of 2 on their backs, and they flew around with those 8 limbs. It was strange. However, the body was still humanoid enough that we could work with it. Oh dear God, we were getting more and more pissed off as it was, but we didn't have time. There were more lives to be saved, and we could still hear the cheering of the crowd. And eventually, after, we guess, about 7 or 8 hours of this shit, everything just kind of stopped. They stopped bringing people in, and we could hear the announcer screaming. We could hear the announcer saying something, but we couldn't figure out what it was. I was exhausted, but we couldn't stop. We had more lives we had to save. We're protectors after all. It's hardwired into our DNA to be protectors. But I still looked over at that kid we had saved. He was still passed out in the corner. He wasn't in any sort of danger of dying, but I seriously wanted to know what in the hell. Why was a kid here? Eventually, the kid woke up as we finally got the mammoth to go out. I asked the kid what was going on. How did he end up here? What the hell's going on? You weren't on the shipment of people that came out here. Oh, they didn't tell you. They didn't tell you what they did. He was drifting in and out of consciousness as he spoke. Dude, hey, wake up. I kind of smacked him around a little bit to get him to wake up. Tell us, what was going on? What happened? Why are you here? Oh, they came. They took us. What do you mean they took you? Who took you? The same aliens that took us? No. Pirates. Pirates. Pirates? What do you mean pirates? I looked over at the other humans. At this time, we had gotten every single one in that room coming close. Tell me, pirates. Shaking him a little bit. Pirates, what is it? Talk to me, kid. Talk to me, or I'm going to splash you with ice water. Oh, they told us we were good pets, entertainment. We show is dangerous. We young better. Sister, cousin, and I could see tears begin to flow down his face as he couldn't put any words together, but something he saw there was enough to make my blood absolutely boil. That is when the other non-human docs came up. You need to get back to work. You need to stop. He is fine. He lives. You get back to work now." I got up, turned around and looked at them, and I could not hide the rage in my eyes. I could not hold it back as I looked that goddamn avian bastard in the face, and I swung as hard as I could, knocking his head back and hearing a crunch inside. It wasn't my hand that made the crunch, it was his spine as his head spun around. I had caught him basically right between his nose and his eyes with that oblong face of his, and it had spun around to the back. He was dead before he hit the ground. With that, the other doctors ran to the control area and hit some sort of giant button. I was like, what the hell is that for? And a few that still had collars showed a little bit of, ow, that tickles, on their necks. I just looked over, and before I even said anything, they just reached up and ripped them off. And I looked back over at the docs who thought maybe they could control us, and I could see the fear in their eyes. That was enough. We didn't take out the docs. We just told them to stay put. And we went outside and we made our way towards the arena, which was not easy. We didn't know the lay of the land. We did not know any hallways to follow. We just listened to the crowd. And we got our way to the arena, which took about 20 minutes. But as we passed by, we could see bodies. Bodies of those that had been forced to fight in the arena. Bodies of not only Xenos, but humans littered the ground. We looked over, there was bodies missing heads, missing multiple appendages. I saw a woman who had been ripped open. Clear claw marks were on her chest, and both of her ribcage halves were in half on the sides. I could visibly see her heart. I began shaking with rage, and I began moving faster and faster to the point where I was almost at a run, but I knew if I ran too fast, I would make a mistake. I didn't have to say anything to the group with me. I could hear them whispering to each other. Whispers like, "Oh, I'm going to kill these motherless bastards. Oh, let me at them. I want my hands on them now." And this was even coming from the girls, those that had helped us out. We finally got towards the arena to a point where we could see over. We couldn't get to it. We were too high and too far away, but we looked out on the glass. I was looking across when somebody on the side hit some sort of speaker box. She turned it on, and we could hear the announcer, "And we have another group of humans. Oh, we have the bidding starting next, ladies and gentlemen, but we have to show you our new crop of humans. These are easily handled. They're not fully formed yet, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, but you can make them do whatever you want. In fact, since they're so small and they're not nearly as strong, they'll make good protectors for your kids. They'll make good pets. And who knows, they might make a good lover for you." And you could hear the crowds oohing and awing at the idea of this. We looked down, and we were only maybe 75 to 100 meters away, and I could see they were bringing in children and teenagers. I did not see anyone over the age of 16, and they all looked scared out of their minds. I looked, many of them were holding their arms or their legs. They were walking funny because they had been beaten into submission. Many of them were bruised. Some of them were being held up by other Xenos as the announcer kept going, "And we've made sure, don't worry, we've made sure to segregate them between male and female for your own pleasure and protection. Don't worry, we've checked them. They are clean, and they are pure for your entertainment and for your use." And the crowd began to ooh and awe even more. And we started going crazy. It wasn't just me, but a man to my left also punched that glass. Unfortunately, as strong as we were, we're not breaking 6 or 7 inches of glass with our bare fists. We started looking around for any way we could find our way down, but before we could do that, security teams had caught up to us. And apparently, nobody had told them, "Don't fuck with a pissed off human." We charged their lines. They tried to hit us with some sort of energy projectile doohickey, but it just seemed to tick us off. Why? because all it did was burn. It felt like somebody had tried to put a cigarette out on your skin. It didn't matter. We crashed into the lines and began to throw them against the wall. I remember grabbing one by the arm, slinging him around and flipping him up against the ceiling and watch him crash against the ceiling and then splat down on the ground. I raised my foot up and crushed my foot down into his skull, making a wonderful pop like a zit as his brain splattered across the entire floor. I then looked at another one who was trying to raise some sort of bladed weapon. Oh, he definitely didn't know who he was screwing with. As he flailed it around like an amateur, I simply got around him, grabbed his wrist, flung him down, used my body weight to throw him to the ground so that he was underneath, got the knife out of his hand, shoved my elbow right into his neck, pushed down as far as I could, and I could feel the blood slowing down as I flipped the blade around. And as I couldn't see, as he was behind my back, I shoved it into his leg and then ripped it out as hard as I could. A wonderful, satisfying stream of a dark, bluish type of blood poured out of his wound. I must have hit an artery or something. I wasn't too well versed in this particular species, so I didn't know exactly what I was striking, but I didn't care. As it went and reached for its leg, I swung back around and sliced my knife around its throat. And with that, we looked up and there was no more Xenos. The rest of the group had taken them down. But now it was time to really get the job done. I started screaming, grab the weapons, grab the weapons, grab the weapons and gear, let's go. Though it was very difficult to get the gear on as it was not designed for humans, we didn't give a crap. We threw on what we could. Any type of belt was used as a bandolier just to hold whatever we had to. The security detail didn't have much. A couple batons, a few restraints, one blade, and one type of, I guess you can call it, pistol. The thing was kind of a joke, but apparently against other Xenos, it gets the job done very well. We found out really quick what it actually does. In actuality, most Xenos do not have the ability to dissipate heat or electric shocks like we do. Actually, very few Xenos have that ability. And that means that this weapon is going to work very well. I fell back on my training and I asked anybody else if they had any other training like mine. Thankfully, 2 other men did. I said right and left flank, and we moved down the hallway. And we kept moving in the direction we believed was the entrance to the arena. We tried our damnedest to make there without any other instances, but pretty soon that was shot out the window as we shot a couple Xenos out the window. We didn't have a choice. They tried to stop us again, but this time they had come with heavier weapons, and we reached over and grabbed their weapons. We put the pistols away, and they had some sort of, I guess you could say, rifle, as it was more akin to a long gun than anything else. However, using it was strange. You couldn't actually put it up to your shoulder. You had to strap it to the side of your arm and hold your arm straight out for it to work. Just weird the way they have these things. A button on top you had to squeeze with your trigger finger and then hit the button on top with your thumb to actually get it to fire. For a second I'm like, wait a minute, do I look like Starscream from the Decepticons? What the? Oi. It didn't matter. We did what we could to take them down. The problem is, trying to operate these stupid weapons, it was terrible, but at least the damn things worked. As we began to move down the hallway even more, we realized by now some sort of alerts must have been sounded, but we could still hear the roar of the crowd. I guess they were hoping they could subdue us before anything else happened. We rushed into the holding area that we thought we would find them, and we didn't find anything except bodies. The bodies of humans. Hundreds of humans. Many of them that had been rotting there for almost 6 months. I recognized 1 or 2 from the original trip out. They had just been discarded and left there. There were also fresh bodies. Bodies of old men, old women. Bodies of other men and women. Bodies of teenagers. Bodies of children. And many of them were not damaged or killed by warfare. No. Many of them had been torn asunder through whatever part of the body they had been used for. Many of the men had their lower parts ripped off as if something had bit them off, and they had been left to just simply bleed out. The women were just torn from one end to the other, many of them with jaws ripped completely off. Some of them, the side of the head ripped open. Other of them, the chest was just gone. It was just gone. The stench in that area made a few of us very nauseous and a few others simply puke. We realized this was simply a dumping ground. There were almost no Xenos at all in there. Just humans. Bodies on bodies on bodies. I could only think of one other time I've ever seen anything like this, and it was the pictures from World War II as bodies were piled up in cordwood to be thrown into a pit and burned. But they weren't going to burn them, no. They were simply going to let humans rot. This was no way that they were going to treat us this way. We ran towards the entrance, and then we were suddenly stopped dead as one of the gates slammed down in front of us. I tried to use the weapons to try and cut our way through, but that was pointless. We went up to the control panel. The control panel didn't even operate at all. We spun around and realized that there was a whole group of Xenos in all sorts of different exosuits closing in on us. We knew this was gonna be very interesting. And then, as they came up, we said the one thing that Xenos would fear beyond anything else. As we looked at each other, we just said, well, fuck it. And we charged at them, weapons blasting away. The weapons ended up not being able to puncture through the exosuits as they could dissipate the heat and the electricity. So we simply released them from our hands, grabbed them by the barrel end, and started swinging them like clubs. That worked, as we began to rip them apart, knocking them over at first, and then using their clumsiness as they were unaccustomed to using exosuits to pin them down, ripping the helmet off, and then reaching in, grabbing the son of a bitch by the neck and ripping his head clean off. Then we got nasty, as we began to realize that there were gaps in these suits. We grabbed the weapons, usually the pistols, and drove them into the points that had weak areas, and we would fire in there. The heat and the electricity inside would quite literally cook the Xeno inside the suit. At one point, we did it to a few avians, and somebody said, "So, who wants fried chicken?" I still remember we all kind of stopped and looked at him like, "Really, dude?" That was funny. And we just kept going through their exosuits. By this time, we finally realized that an alarm had actually been sounded, as we could hear a strange tone. It wasn't anything we would use as an alert signal, but it was something strange, something not right. We realized that we had been discovered, not only trying to get through, but discovered that we could not be stopped. I looked and realized that at least 2 of our number had been taken down in the fighting. They held their wounds as tight as they could, but I could tell if they weren't treated soon, they'd bleed out. We told them to go back to the medical bay, get fixed, do something, or else you're going to just croak here. We can't fix you. We don't have any supplies to fix you with. Running back down, we realized that we were not the only ones. We ran into another group of humans that had done something similar to us, but they were much more worse for wear, as every single one of them was bruised, battered, and bleeding. I asked them what was going on. Well, we heard they're killing kids, man. We're not sticking around waiting for that shit. I just looked at them, nodded, and we charged down even further. I led the charge as we went towards the arena again. This time, they must have realized that we were coming and tried to throw monsters in front of our way, but the monsters that had faced humans before simply cowered in fear and backed away, allowing us to charge all the way through. We got into another large area, and this time it was even bigger. A larger area that was mostly a tunnel, and on both sides were nothing but even more bodies. There must have been hundreds of them. Thousands of them as they littered the walls of each of these. How in the ever-loving crap did this happen? Young, old, it didn't matter. They were all on the sides, all torn apart, The stench of rotting flesh and fresh open wounds permeated the air. I was well versed at this now, and everything took over. My humanity at that point had failed me. I was no longer human anymore. My training had kicked in fully at that point, and I no longer had any craps to give. We charged through, and I remember going up to that door, this time not even stopping, as I crashed into the gate, and to my surprise, it almost gave fully. I backed up a little more. 3 others joined me as we crashed into the gate with our shoulders, and the damn thing actually gave. It cracked open enough that we could rip the doors open and get through. This time, we were in the arena, and the guards were all there. This time the crowds were whooping and hollering, the ones that were left, of course. The arena looked like it was half empty. We looked around and realized that we had somewhat been led into a trap. Are we rats in a maze? What the hell is going on? Then we saw a whole bunch of the other gates open, and this time not only humans, but other exosuit-covered creatures came out. They also released any other type of monsters that were not accustomed to facing humans. This was going to be nasty. Then I looked up, and I could see the booth with the announcer. And here goes our main event. Originally, we thought we might have to clear out the arena, but no, our main event is here. We are going to see these humans that have fought their way to the arena. They want to fight so bad, and we are going to give them a fight. Today, they're going to face off against the strongest units in the station, along with... And that was the last thing he said. I aimed very carefully, and I put a blaster round right through his crooked skull. I saw as the bolt hit him. His amphibian head exploded, and his body slumped, and then fell forward. It then slid off the podium it was at, and the crowd not only cheered, but was in sudden shock. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. We had no interest in the crowd. We just wanted our people. We looked around, and I could hear, "Where are the kids? Where are the kids? Where are the fucking kids? Where are they?" We didn't know. And at that point, it didn't matter. We had to get out of this arena. We had fought our way here, but it was already too late. They had realized what was going on. These guys weren't as stupid as we'd like them to be. But now, we have trouble. I looked at everyone. I said, "Listen, stay close and follow me." It was a 3-way fight, of course. The monsters that had come in, the creatures, cryptids, whatever the hell you want to call them, were beginning to move their way around. They seemed sort of interested in each other, but more interested with the exosuited personnel and us. So what did I do? I made the crowd move so that the exosuited personnel were between us and the monsters. The exosuited monsters must have thought we were a threat as they got between us and those creatures, not realizing they were showing their back to creatures that hunt for survival. And just as the first of these energy weapons fired, those creatures attacked. They jumped on the exosuits and began to tear them apart, much more efficient than anything we could do. The ones, especially those that had the bovine head and the caterpillar bodies, just crashed into the formation, using their horns to rip everything apart, and as the bodies were underneath, they used their multiple legs to crush anything underneath. The big body just seemed to raise up and smash down anything, and then I just screamed, "Go! We gotta go now!" And we bolted out one of the doors to complete dismay of the crowd itself. Although they must have figured it must have been some sort of act and didn't really care. We got to the first door, and I realized we had to find our way out of here. I looked, and I was greatly surprised to see one of the connectors was there. I slammed the back of my head next to it, and I downloaded as fast as I could the blueprints for the station. The schematic showed me exactly where we needed to go. I told them which way to go to take care of the kids, and then I took one small contingent to where I know we needed to be. We ran as fast as we could. Human legs can move a hell of a lot faster than any Xeno ever thought we could, especially with just 2 legs, and we made it to where we needed to be. The doors were shut, but I didn't care. I took that weapon that I had, and I blasted the lock, and thankfully it short-circuited. We were able to get the doors open, and I was looking at the bridge control for this entire station. When we walked in, the Xenos all looked in total shock and fear. How did we possibly get there? How do we get there so quick? It shouldn't be possible. What are these things? One of the Xenos even looked on, and I saw the captain, or whatever passes for one, come up and demand to know who we were and what we were doing there. I grabbed a hold of his neck, squeezed him as I raised him up, and with a full Vader moment, said, "We're human, and we're here to kick your ass." And I slammed his head down to the ground, not realizing that I slammed it down hard enough to actually crack his skull apart. Apparently, seeing his cranium be plastered all over the ground was enough to get the rest of the bridge crew to just about pee themselves. I told our guys to go over to the comms unit and make sure everything is locked down. I pointed out each one, and thankfully they had been given knowledge of the alien language, and it didn't take long for them to get a hold of everything. The environmental system, the docking clamps, everything. And we even warmed up the weapons array. It wasn't much at all, but all you had to do was lock onto a ship, and it was enough for them to back away. The whole idea of energy shields that were going to stop all sorts of ordnance is a science fiction BS method of way of doing things. In actuality, they knew well enough to stay away. Once we had everything in lockdown, it was time to tell the others where to find the rest of our kin, the rest of our people, the rest of our species. So we lit the tunnels up to let them know which way to go. We got on the PA system and let them know to follow the lights. We made sure that no ship could get out, and we saw on the video screen as each of the ships was discovered, and as it was, the humans would rush in to grab the kids, and in some cases I saw things on that screen I didn't want to see. These creatures were already taking liberties with the children. My blood burned so bad that the only thing that satiated it was watching a few of our people not only hurt this Xeno, but actually rip its reproductive organs clean off. As it sat there and screamed on the ground, I began to search the files as best I could. I got into the captain's chair and was able to lock into the entire system. I told everybody I was going to search it all, and I might be out of the game for a minute, so they need to protect this area. They took the weapons, and a few of them took up positions so that they would not be interrupted. And I began to search the files. These files twisted me in ways that were even beyond what I even thought was possible. I saw files of how the Xenos were taking liberties, and they would use most of us not as gladiators as we thought, or as medical personnel. Actually, it was less than 1% of us were medical personnel, but also used us basically as guard dogs, as pets, and as for entertainment. We would be put out to be set into fights with different types of Xenos, similar to what I was, but I had it lucky in most cases. There wasn't much that we couldn't face. So what they do, they sent more and more and more. They wanted to see how far we could go, what it would take to actually take us down, how many of their own type of guard dogs did it take. It didn't matter if it was a Zerishian, a Kane, a Jacquino, or a Fansusa. It did not matter which one of the species they threw at us or what weapons they had. It would always take at least a dozen of them, but it didn't matter. They always delighted at the death of one of us, and it was always entertainment. The stronger of us, those that were shown to be the most physically fit, were taken for pleasure. However, this did not matter with the females. As far as they were concerned, a female was a female. and females were good for one thing. Their own species was for reproduction. However, any human female of any age was for pleasure. And they thought the same thing with the males as well. And Lord help you if a Jarenta thought it would be a good idea to mate with a human, because they expect the male genitalia to pop off, as that is what their own males do, and it regrows for the next mating cycle. Instead, they would simply rip it off when you're done. I can only imagine the pain they were going through as I watched the video of guys screaming in pain as not only all their meat and veg was suddenly ripped clean out, but the femoral arteries were both spraying up into the air. The only luxury for them was the fact that they bled out and passed out in the matter of seconds. Even with that, and even with the idea of the men being sent out there to fight over and over and over nonstop until they finally dropped from exhaustion, which many times took days, the female and the children got it so much worse. I found out that after we had shown up everything they threw at us that first day we were in the arena, that humans became prized, and pirate raids became very, very common. They would show up on Earth and simply take whoever they wanted. Lord help you if you tried to fight against them, because they had no qualms with killing a whole bunch of humans just to take one or two. They didn't even look at us as sentient species. They didn't believe us sapient enough to survive out there. I couldn't believe any of it. But now I had it all. I had all the information. I downloaded it so that every single person could know this and know what was going on. Since we had taken the station, there's only one thing to say to them. This will happen no more.